Hey everybody, my name's Amanda Wolf. I'm sitting here today with Felicia, a licensed counselor, and Mariah, a licensed school counselor. These last few weeks we've been in our series Surviving the Holidays, and we've been talking about trauma and depression and burnout and how prevalent it is in this season. So today we're going to be looking at anxiety and have a conversation about what does anxiety look like? What does it mean? How can we help people who do have experienced some anxiety? So I want to start off by asking first, what is anxiety? How can we identify some symptoms that we have within ourselves?
So when your stress is out of proportion for the situation, that's kind of an indicator that I'm stressed out, I'm feeling anxious, something must be wrong.
So when I was in high school, I experienced some anxiety around a situation and immediately had to go to the emergency room because I couldn't breathe. I couldn't get any air. My hands and my arms, everything was starting to close up. And so from that experience, the doctors said that I've experienced a panic attack. I mean, there was something in my brain that can no longer fire because I experienced that traumatic moment. And so now when I'm working out or doing other things that my heart rate is maybe increasing, my brain can trigger and I can start to panic and feel like something dangerous is happening to me. So what really is a panic attack and what is it like?
Well, you really summed it up there, but that's sudden, intense feelings that almost like the world is closing around you and you're going to the ER is very common, that people think they're having a heart attack, their chest hurts, their hands are getting sweaty, there may or may not be stimuli around them, but they are feeling sick.
So Mariah, as a licensed school counselor, what are some language that we can use to describe anxiety to our children?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, it's important to teach them how to identify their feelings and their emotions. And so going straight to anxiety is a really big word. So telling them what nervous is, what it looks like, what it feels like, upset, worried, overwhelmed, stressed. Those are all words that most adults can associate with anxious feelings. And so identifying that and then letting them know that it is natural for them to feel this way, and teaching them tools and strategies to manage it is super important. And I don't think we need to pretend like they won't understand. I think as if they don't, right, encourage them to ask the questions and be like this, well, I'm feeling it here, right? Like my heartbeat is just going faster and faster and faster, and my palms are getting sweaty. What does this mean? And if you don't know the answer, also telling them, I don't know, but like, let's look into that together.
How important is it to understand your child's mental health state?
I think it's extremely important because especially if they're learning and trying to navigate through their emotional states and recognizing like, hey, this is not, a bad feeling, right? I'm feeling this certain way and I can persevere and have that grit to move forward, but also being able to recognize like, okay, my child needs a break, needs just a brain break or a calming space to just, reset and to relax before we jump into this next task, because transitions are really huge for some children, and recognizing what places or what events or, the people they're about to be around. And if you can't understand how they're feeling and where they're at, then, it could lead to more intense things in the future.
So Felicia, I have seen you a few times ask your kids, like, do you need a mental health day? Especially when they've experienced loss of a pet or other situations. How has those moments helped them become more self-aware for their own mental health?
Micah, my 8th grader, realized this year that he was overcommitting himself. He joined basketball, he's in band, he's in an honors class, and it was too much for him. And this is the first year I've seen him. He came to me and said, I want to quit band. He loves band. He gets to go to Worlds of Fun every year at the end of it. He realized that he was unable to manage that many activities, so he scaled back, and I really saw a lot of growth in him and maturity, that he was able to realize this is outside of what I can handle and be successful at.
That's such great self-awareness to be able to understand, especially as you move into adulthood and the responsibilities get more real and the world seems to get more real, to you. And so that's just great to be able to establish some of that self-awareness early on in our children's lives.
You do have to be careful, though, because my 10-year-old often asks for a mental health day. And really, that just means he wants to be home with mom and dad. So it can backfire a time or two.
So how can we assist someone or our children who are struggling with anxiety?
I think it's important to really let them know, like, I'm here for you, and not to brush off their feelings by saying, oh, it's okay, or you'll get over it, or, we'll deal with this later. Hurry up, we have places to go, and minimizing what they're feeling. And so making sure you're recognizing and validating, like, I see right now that you are feeling a little overwhelmed, you are stressed out, and, sometimes these are anxious feelings. You might feel like, you want to run away right now, or you just want to freeze and just give up. But teaching them those skills to manage whatever emotion they may be feeling. And if it's at the point where it's at anxiety, and that intensity is too much for them, then seeking help, from an outside source.
So for adults, it's really easy to go to scripture and say, don't be anxious, and cast all your cares on him. But what we have to realize is in those moments when people are coming to you and saying, I need help with anxiety, we may have scriptures to help us, but also they want to be heard and listened to and know that their emotions are valid and they are feeling them. And so supporting them through listening and maybe even offering, hey, I have a counselor that I know, would you want me to go with you? Some support like that is helpful.
So when I was going through my own anxiety journey, I would often hear, you need to pray more, you need to trust God more. And I tended to feel guilty because it was like maybe my faith isn't good enough, and that's why I'm experiencing anxiety. So is having anxiety not trusting God?
I'm really sorry you felt that way, Amanda, because I don't think that's the way God would want you to feel. We do see evidence in Scripture that we may misuse sometimes, saying, cast all your cares upon him. Don't be anxious in anything. Pray to God. So we think if you pray, read the Bible, go to church, it should all be healed. There is evidence that we need to rely on God. However, there are also times where anxiety is just the body's natural way of saying something is not right. And many times it's through trauma that we see residual anxiety. And so I personally do not think that anxiety is always sin. It may be sin. It may be that you're not trusting God, but it also may be your body saying, this bad thing happened to me once, and now I'm remembering it, and I'm traumatized by it. And in those cases, I think that's where you turn to someone like a school counselor. They can help you figure out what it is that you're struggling with and how to learn coping skills.
I think there's a different level, too, to trusting God. And it's, I can trust that he's going to help me navigate through this, through my emotions, like through my feelings, and give me the tools to be able to understand what I'm feeling inside. And then, just find a way to tame it a little bit. And I think the ultimate goal isn't to get rid of it, because as Felicia said, it's natural to have that as a response. And it's important for us to recognize when we are afraid of something or when we do need to be scared of something. So I think that trusting in God in different ways through your anxiety is important.
So what are some tools that we can use to overcome anxiety?
I think that talking about it, right? Like finding someone who's willing to listen to you is a great step, but you can also write it down, right? Get all your thoughts or your fears or your worries out on a journal. Find something that's just soothing, something that ultimately helps calm you down, whether that's music or coloring or drawing or going on a walk, right? And sometimes exercise is okay, I think, as a tool. However, in some people's experiences is when their heartbeat gets to that level of response to where, your brain's triggered for you to be anxious, then it's not so good. So things like yoga or Pilates or simply just stretching are other ways too.
So if I'm a kid, what can I do when I'm experiencing anxiety?
Finding someone to turn to. I also think that knowing when you need to be assertive and tell somebody like, hey, I need some help. I'm not sure what's going on right now, and asking somebody for that assistance. I also think that learning emotions and feelings is super important, and also recognizing that when you experience nervousness or worrying, that it may look different for you than it does your peers. And so allowing them to understand that their response to an emotion is their own. And once they can identify where they're feeling it, then it's a lot easier to manage.
When do I need to see a counselor or seek medical help?
So when your anxiety starts to interfere with your day-to-day living, and that includes relationships, then it's time to see a counselor. It can also be when you're turning to poor coping skills. So you may turn to excessive drugs or alcohol. Then it's time to go in and see someone.
I also think that we tend to want to pile ourselves in busyness, right? To where we don't want to recognize what we're feeling, because we know once we do that, or when someone does that, then it's like, oh, something's wrong with me, right? Or I'm not trusting God, or, now I have to deal with this, and I don't. I'm just going to keep busy and stay busy, and that's just going to help. I'll feel better after that. Also, when you were starting to recognize, like, hey, I need help, I need to talk to somebody about this, is when we start to avoid places or situations or people, knowing or thinking we know that I'm going to feel anxious in this situation. So an example is, I got burned on the stove once, and so I know I can't be near the stove, but I also know, I'm not even going to go in the kitchen because I'm so anxious right now. Then it's okay, I need some help.
Yeah. Recognizing it's easier to get help when it's a small thing and you have a few behaviors that are abnormal versus waiting and letting them compound. Well, I can't go in the kitchen, so that means I'm going to avoid that room altogether. And you know what? The living room's super close. Let's just stay in my bedroom all day. So attacking it when it is just, I don't want to be by the stove, is a lot easier than I no longer want to be in my home because I don't feel safe.
Why can the holidays be more difficult for anxiety? Why does the season seem to peak our mental health?
The answer is mother-in-laws. No, I'm just kidding. One of the reasons why I think is the holidays are expensive. So we're putting out a lot more money that time of year. And so looking at budgeting ahead of time can really be helpful. Even if that's starting in January, I'm going to put $20 aside or buy a gift card, knowing that it'll help my budget in November, December. Family dynamics are hard. This is the one time a year I'm going to see Cousin Carol, who just drives me crazy. I know we're going to have that conversation about the politics we don't agree on or the religion we don't agree on. And then lastly, for me, I think that the loss of loved ones. Many times we have traditions around the holidays that include our loved ones. And when we've lost them, even if several years have gone by, we remember, well, this is the dish grandma used to make mashed potatoes in, and I'm really, really sad about that because I love mashed potatoes.
Yeah, I think too, from a children's perspective, they are so used to what every day looks like. At this time I go to school and I have math at this time and this at this time, and during the holidays there's a lot more flexibility and lack of consistency, and so that just spikes all of our feelings, especially our anxious ones, because we don't know what our day is going to look like or the next day. And there's so many transitions, right? Like, well, we start this and then we finish this and I have to start something else, and your brain just can't catch up because it's so unfamiliar. I also think that it's a change of scenery, environment. You touched on family too, right? Like, I'm now put in at a place where it's not just my immediate family, not just what I'm known to be comfortable in, but now I have to be a little uncomfortable and navigate through what that feels like.
Yeah.
So are there any helpful resources that we can use or that we can share with others who are experiencing anxiety?
Yeah, I have this book. You can purchase it on Amazon or wherever, but it's about like $10. It's Name and Tame Your Anxiety. It's a kid's guide. And what I really like about it is it teaches you how to navigate through those difficult conversations and understanding what is anxiety, what causes it, when do I seek help, and when I do, what does that look like? And in the back, there's a ton of different resources, a lot of different books, some videos you can watch, and some workbooks, to work through. And so working with your children with a book and using that as a resource is extremely helpful.
So I want to thank you guys for having the conversation about anxiety and being honest with what does it look like and how can we recognize it in ourselves and how can we help others. So thank you, Felicia. Thank you, Mariah, for sharing your insight and your expertise with us.